differently than I did. He might do it better. He may not. But still, the thing is, there's no remembrance of former things. You know, it's just like a national leader. The national leader can be going along real good. He could be doing good deeds, doing good for the nation. But all he has to do is make one mistake, and all his good works are going to be forgotten. Everybody's going to remember that mistake, but they're not going to remember the good works that he did. So then, let's go back up to verse 5 and 6, because this is really I found this to be so interesting. I don't know when the scientific evidence or the science in understanding the circuits of the wind and how the motion of the sun, or even the water wheel, you know, the evaporation and the water wheel and
water cycle.
The water cycle. I don't know when all that was established. Okay, but look at this now. He says in verse 5, the sun also arises, and this is interesting because if you have any knowledge of any kind of mythological pagan creative moffats, pagan religions did not, or their understanding of the natural world and the heavens about them was not in this light. He says, the sun arises, and the sun goeth down, and hasteneth to his place where he arose. Now, doesn't that see? Now you read that again, and you look at that, and you see it. All right, you see the breaks. You see the breaks. That's important. Where those breaks are. The sun arises, the sun goeth down, and what does the sun do? It does it again. It comes around, hasteneth to where it arose. Now then, you know what the ancients believed? They believed, and there's variations on this, but essentially what they believed is that the sun went into the netherworld, and it was held captive by the god of the netherworld. And there was a battle down there between the sun god and the god of the underworld, whoever that god of the underworld might be. Each culture called him by a different name, but it was the same god. And so then the sun god eventually overpowered the underworld god, and the sun came back up. There was nothing about the sun hastening to its place. See the circle, there's a circle there. The sun rises, the sun goes down, and then it hastens back to where it came. We see that cycle there. And then, not only that, but this motion of the sun going around carries over into verse 6. Now, you don't see it too readily in the English, but if we were Hebrew and we could read the Hebrew text, we would see that the motion of the sun continues with the wind. And it says, the wind goeth toward the south. But now I say you don't readily see it until you stop and think about it. The sun moves. How does the sun move?
East to west.
East to west. But it also moves north to south and back again, doesn't it? And the air currents, the currents of the wind, the jet stream, follows the motion of the sun. When the sun goes down towards the south, then all the cold air up in Canada comes down on us, doesn't it? But when the sun goes back up towards the north, it pushes all that cold air back up into the Arctic, and it brings the warm air from the south up to us. And so we see the circuits of the wind currents. Right here in verse 6, the wind goeth toward the south, as the sun goes towards the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. Now, you've all heard of Tornado Alley. We're in Tornado Alley. And they say that the tornadoes follow the motion of the sun. And it starts about now, about towards the end of February, maybe the beginning of March, down in Louisiana, and it works its way up as the sun goes up north. The tornadoes will follow the motion of the sun on up, and so when it gets up to where we are, along about May or June, of course then in June it starts to go back, but along about April or May into June, that's when the tornadoes start to affect us the most. It's because that's the motion of the sun. When it reaches that peak, then look out and for cover. But not only that, but look at what he goes on to say in verse 7. All the rivers run into the sea. Now what sea is he talking about? Now where is the preacher located? He's located in Jerusalem. Where's Jerusalem located? Next to the Dead Sea. It's not very far from the Dead Sea. So all the rivers, Jordan River is not the only river that runs into the Dead Sea. There's a tributaries that runs into the Dead Sea also. He says all the rivers run into the sea. Yet, the sea is not full. And when you think about it, that's true. You watch, like for instance, the Great Lakes. There's a bunch of rivers running into the Great Lakes. But the Great Lakes don't ever overflow, do they? What happens? And look, he goes on, he says, the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. You don't see them returning. You don't see the water returning to where they came from. But what we see here, we see us